what a very good weekend of international rugby we've just had. 2 games in particular stand out to me. I'm going to talk about the 4 main games this weekend. It's going to be a long one. Please stay with me. I have set some timestamps for this video so you can skip to the games you do want to hear me talk about. I've put a bunch of notes together. They're all over the place. Bear with me. I am not feeling 100% either, as you can tell by the sound of my voice. So I'm going to give this a go. It was just such an exciting round of football, so it's worth making a video for. So the first game I'm going to talk about is the Australia versus Wales game. I'll talk about the Argentina game against France, All Blacks, England, of course, and the Springboks versus Ireland. So let's start with Australia versus Wales. Australia winning this one 36-28, an 8-point lead in the end. Australia started the game better than the Welsh, scoring 2 tries, but both tries were pretty enterprising, but they were against the run of play, but you can tell that the Wallabies are playing with extra confidence. Wales, they got back into the game in that first half. They scored 2 tries off line-out mauls to hook the hooker Lake, and the second one was after the Wallabies lock Salakaya Loto was sent to the bin or yellow carded. So the difference in the first half ended up being the 3 penalties to Lolosio. The score was 23-14. Wales scored first after half time to take the score within 2, 23-21. So they're well in the game, and it was a proper contest. Conditions were pretty average. The weather was very wet, but the Wallabies scored twice after the Welsh try to score to stretch the lead. But missing both conversions, it's worth noting. And then Dungunu's try, the second try of those 2, was very rare. Wales managing to keep the ball from going into touch from a penalty kick, and Dungunu just snapped up the ball and scored. So again, a very opportunistic try. So 3 of the tries sort of going against the run of play in a way. But the young Welsh winger Dyer, he scored a great solo try in the corner. He beat a few tacklers along the sideline to score in the corner to get within 5 points of the Wallabies with 10 to go. Of course, they missed the Welsh missed conversion. But the Welsh couldn't score again after that, and Donaldson kicked a penalty with only 2 minutes remaining for the Wallabies. Yeah, look, I think that the Wallabies now have won the series, but I think that really is a great start to Joe Smith's time as Wallabies coach. You can already see the difference he's made to the team, and as I said, confidence in particular. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Wallabies go against in the Rugby Championship against better opposition. I don't know if the Welsh are in a great way at the moment, but they certainly gave it a good crack in this game. Just couldn't quite get it done, get it across the line. So let's move on to Argentina versus France. France losing this one. I had actually tipped France to win this one in a close one, following on from their last week performance, but Argentina managed to get away with this one, or win this one. This game style was a complete contrast in particular to the South Africa versus Ireland game. It's certainly a lot more expansive in terms of running rugby. And it was quite noticeable in the first sort of 10-20 minutes, Argentina offloading the ball a lot, keeping the ball in play and live. And the other example was France taking a quick tap in their own half, running into space, and then from that play, France scored first. And that wasn't long after almost scoring moments earlier. But yeah, an example of style, Argentina, they were 7 points behind. They had a penalty right out in front, very kickable, and they kicked to touch to rather go for the try rather than penalty. So that was pretty evident in terms of their intention, and they did manage to score from that to get the score 7-7. Argentina scored 2 more tries. One of those was a penalty from a scrum and a backline for backline move for the fly half to score, which was a really good try as well. The halftime score 21-10. France had one final play to try and score, and they sort of mucked that up a little bit. They did have a chance to score at the end of that first half. France, they scored 2 tries in the second half. One off a charge down and bounce of the ball. France had a yellow card at the 55th minute. Argentina scored from the line out from that penalty, 25-26. So very close game at that stage with around a quarter of the game remaining. And then another Argentinian try. And that was a second try to the reserve prop coming on. So the score was 33-25, 8 points difference at that point. France needed to score twice, and then France couldn't score again anyway, but Argentina managing to defend their lead for that last 13 minutes. The yellow card to the French was actually pivotal. Argentina managed, I think they scored their 2 tries while that player was off the field and didn't score again. I thought France might cause another upset here, of course, as I mentioned, but Argentina put in a completely different performance from that of last week. I did say there would be some tries in this game, and there was 8, so a few more tries than a couple of the other games over the weekend. So let's keep things moving. We'll talk about the South Africa versus Ireland game next. South Africa was pretty strong favourites here at $1.27 when I recorded those odds, and Ireland at $3.50. I had South Africa to win this 1-12. I knew it would be close game again. Anyway, so it was a pretty frantic start, extremely physical, but Willie LaRue, he went off injured early. I think it was in the first 5 minutes, but yeah, hectic, physical, and injuries, players going down. There was a blood bin for Eben Etzebeth as an example. Ireland scored a penalty early, and because Eben Etzebeth was offside, again South Africa making their intentions quite clear quite early, trying to put some pressure on, but he just got that one slightly wrong. But Ireland showing they were up for it and matching, certainly matching South Africa physically in the first half. Ireland tried the inside ball off a forward ball runner. They broke the line twice early in that first half. Then the variation of forward or ball movement led to the first try, which was to the Irish fullback coming in to take that inside ball. There was another Irish runner as well, but the fullback went straight through the gap. And I think Mel Herb went off injured as well. Snyman, later in that first half, and Snyman came on for the third time in 17 minutes, covering off Eben Etzebeth's blood bin and other things. So it was just another indication of how tough that certainly first 20 to 30 minutes was in particular. South Africa scored their first points through a penalty off a massive scrum, completely dominating scrum. Oxenche, now one of my favourites easily. That man was in everything while he was on the field, even retrieving a kick that was chipped in behind him and then offloading to keep the ball alive. South Africa threw a lot at the Irish, only managing to come away with 3 points when there were a couple of try-scoring chances that went begging, really. So Ireland just hanging on. Ireland managed to get the ball not long after the kick-off and bounce back with a penalty. And they bounced back with a penalty. South Africa kicked off into goal, making a mistake straight after that penalty, which gave the Irish scrum on halfway. Complete turnaround, 3 points, and then a scrum on halfway. The Irish definitely had the momentum. The Ireland kicked another penalty to lead 16-6 and were clearly the better team. At halftime, James Lowe had a great half, beating tackles, kicking well. I thought he was a bit of a standout. Incredible start to the half. So the Irish, I felt like were the better team in that first half. You can tell that the South Africans were flustered, not quite as clinical as they normally are. Clerk, making a couple of errors as well, pretty uncharacteristic, and he was pretty frustrated, you can tell too. And I think the South Africans were generally frustrated, so certainly wanting to make a difference in the second half. But yeah, incredible start to the second half as well. Break by the South African fullback, not long after the play had resumed. So South Africa making a really good start. But the South Africa fullback that came on for Willie LaRue made a really good break and went straight into Tad Furlong, who just seemed completely out of it, didn't know where he was, trailing back. But the line break had been made, and South Africa were hot on attack. Tad Furlong managing to find his way back into play and making a few tackles, I did note. But yeah, so he did have a knock to the head. The Island somehow managing to stop that play, and then Faf de Klerk kicked 5 metres out from the line, just basically giving the ball straight back to the Irish. That wasn't the right play, that one. South Africa scored 2 penalties in the first 10 minutes of half time. The second was after a yellow card. One of the Irish players going to the bin, and then South Africa scored yet another penalty. Score was now 15-16, and South Africa clearly on top during this half, completely sort of turning things around a little bit. South Africa taking the lead at the 56-minute mark. They had scored 3 penalties and 9 points, while Ireland were down to 14 men. So a pretty pivotal period of play there. And then Ireland bring on some experience, around that 60-minute mark. Mane coming on, who was captain last week. Bringing experience on, certainly that's how South Africa do it. You have a lot of experience on the bench, mate, and finishing games is so important, isn't it? But also the prop for Ireland came on in the lockers. So a few changes, and then just straight after that there was a penalty to the Irish after their kickoff, and they took the lead back. South Africa, they scored 2 more penalties before the Irish finally got a line out on the South Africa 5 metre line after a penalty to the Irish. But Ireland butchered the line out completely and somehow still get the free kick. I know what the referee called, but I watched it quite a few times actually, and so I could feel for the South African fans there and the South African team. I don't know, I can't quite see how the Irish got away with that one, but they got the free kick. And then it was held up. There was a dropout, and then South Africa had to kick the dropout, and then from the dropout there was a couple of passes later, and the Irish kicked a drop goal, which was different to see. That was pretty impressive. I think the Irish were back in the game at that point. A lot of back and forth for the last 5 minutes. I think the Irish were trailing by 2 points at that point. South Africa playing for territory and basically trying to shut the game down, and they know what to do. They know how it works. They know what to do in every scenario. That experience, certainly, as I mentioned in a previous video, this was the most experienced South African starting 15 that we've ever seen in history. So they were playing for territory, trying to shut the game down, but there was a few mistakes both ways, but more from Ireland really. So you sort of expected South Africa, with all their experience, to sort of close it out. That's what it looked like. They were at home, but yeah, certainly, the key mistakes there was a few mistakes in that frantic last 5 minutes, but the key mistake was the knock-on in the 77th minute from a successful South African line-out, taking the ball into tackle and losing the ball, giving the Irish one more chance, basically, but to be fair, the Irish were all the way back on their own 22. So with almost 2 minutes to go, the Irish had one more chance, and it took about 2 minutes for that scrum to finally get the ball out and get moving with the play. The Irish run it out of their 22, and then they kick it, which in that circumstances, trailing, you just wouldn't do that. But it was a perfect kick, and it made or forced South Africa to make a play and take it out to give the Irish a line out, and that was, I guess, part of their last chance. In hindsight, the South African player probably didn't need to take it out, but you couldn't take the risk in that scenario. But yeah, there was only time enough for one more play of the game. The Irish secured the line out a couple of phases later, and then kick another drop goal to Frawley. It was an unbelievable finish, and I had to rewatch the last 5 minutes to work out sort of what had just happened. Really, it was quite something. The South Africa players couldn't believe it either. All of them just getting straight into the ref, asking for obstruction, check it. A lot of frustration, but and even Peter Steph du Toit, of course, some Irish player came over and to wind him up, and Steph du Toit reacted, and he is not that kind of player. So there was a lot of tension. But for me, there wasn't anything in that one. I don't suppose anyone would disagree with that, but I would like to hear your thoughts. But I didn't notice anything. Cheslin Kolbe slipped, and to be fair, those Irish players did not move out of position, out of their spot. They knew what was coming, and they played to it perfectly. But anyway, and of course Kolbe read it too. But it was a great drop goal, and So look. If we sort of, I think South Africa were in the ref's ear, but they were just hoping for something that had happened. But there was nothing there for me. The Irish won the first half, South Africa won the second, but Ireland was still in it with and miraculously took their opportunity to beat, and they beat the most experienced South Africa side in history at home, and I think this was Ireland's second win in South Africa, so huge moment for them. And as a neutral observer, I thought it was a great game. I thought the refereeing was a positive contributor to that as well. Some people might disagree with that, but as a neutral observer, that's what I thought. Not many teams could have, let's just talk about South Africa a second, but not many teams would have been able to turn things around in the second half as they did. They know how to finish well, and they always have a very good bench, don't they? But yeah, look, I'd like to know what the fans think of that game. There was just a lot happening in that game. It was incredible. I just sat there just shaking my head, to be fair. So let's go now to the final game I want to talk about, All Blacks versus England. It was an all-time game, I think, as well, following on from last week perfectly. Certainly it was an extremely intense and physical start to the game. It was one end to the other, and it was quite expansive. Both teams trying to play with some pace, spreading the ball, also both teams spreading the ball to the edge, England included. The wingers touched the ball a few times early, and no one necessarily were dominant, but the All Blacks did manage to get some territory from a penalty and a line out, and then Mark Talia snuck down the blind side to score the first try, and it was converted from the sideline. It was good to see. The goal kicking was a little bit better than the week before. Mackenzie kicking from the sideline, so that persevering with Mackenzie, which is good. But the English did get the ball back into the All Blacks half, and they spread to one wing, drawing all the All Blacks defence across, and then a perfect cross kick for the winger Waboso to beat Mackenzie, to gather the ball. There was no other All Blacks there when he gathered, and then he beat Mackenzie to score, which was a really good try, a perfect kick. The All Blacks, they made a good break down the sideline after that, after the restart, through Mackenzie, and very nearly scored themselves. Marcus Smith saving a try through an intercept, and really the All Blacks should have scored there. There was the inside pass would have been the better option than going wide. But yeah, England, not long after that, England made two handling errors in All Blacks territory, which is sort of devastating for them, and they kick in the All Blacks 22, and of course their kicking was pretty sharp this game, but that wasn't a good one. But the All Blacks just still struggled to get out of their own half. That was a real key feature of the game. But when they finally did, they gained a penalty in kickable position, and then they the All Blacks kicked the second penalty. The England will have, they'll be have been a bit frustrated to not score points with the territory advantage that they did have for a fair part of that first half. And I guess the point I wanted to make was that it was pretty good discipline by the All Blacks throughout those periods, not giving away too much there, but which has been an issue for them in the past. But yeah, the All Blacks, they were they mucked up another kickoff, giving England the ball back in the 22, and another perfect cross kick try from that. It was the same side of the field as the previous cross kick, but this time the taller left winger was on the right wing side there, and he caught the ball over Mark Tilly to score. And then that was right on half time, and then the try was converted. So the half-time score was 14-13 to England, and the All Blacks felt like they were going to go into the half with a lead there, but the English managed to upset that. Similarly to the previous game last week, where the English managed to kick a penalty to level the scores, the All Blacks just need to learn to shut that down a bit better. But yeah, the 47th minute penalty that went to England, still struggling with that penalty really. There was a lot happening in that collision, and as Dalton Papali'i went into the ruck, it was a line out and there was a play off the line out. Dalton Papali'i was just getting to the ruck and sort of pushed just bumped or pushed at the English player, and didn't give them the chance to contest that ruck. So New Zealand, I guess, had that advantage. So Dalton Papali'i was taking that advantage away. So England kicked the penalty, and then anyway, technically it was a correct decision, so England got the 3 points. Some All Blacks errors were hard to get your head around, really, making it very hard for themselves. England put on a lot of pressure. The All Blacks were just hanging on. It felt like England were sort of controlling the game right up to sort of that 55th minute. And dominating territory. I'll talk about stats at the end in my recap, in my sort of general thoughts. But certainly you felt like from the 20th minute to the 60th minute or 55th minute, England dominated. And anyway, it was quite frustrating. All Blacks were getting frustrated and they weren't handling that very well. Finlay Christie got a knock to the head, so he went off. It was his own player. There was no foul play there, which brought Cortez Ratama on, and that was his debut. Now, I must admit I was at the ground, and there was a lot of applause for him. It was a big boost. Everyone was a little bit nervous to see how he'd go, but he played very well. I'll try and talk about him if I remember at the end. But yeah, and then England were in the All Blacks half there. They had to put in another cross kick, but it wasn't as good, and they gave the ball away again. I did talk about just kicking too much in the All Blacks half. It worked at times, don't get me wrong. They scored 2 tries in the first half from it, but certainly when Beauden Barrett came on, that changed things. But anyway, so Beauden Barrett, he came on at the 55th minute, the All Blacks coaching staff gave him plenty of time to, I guess, add value to the game. AB's had a line-out turnover. There was a good Barrett kick, another All Blacks turnover, and then another good Beauden Barrett kick, and the ABs were finally had put England on their 5-metre line. So Beauden Barrett making an impact straight away. And it was starting to a few passes later, Barrett made it. Play moved on. A few passes later, Beauden Barrett made a break, and Talia scored a try, taking the lead for the All Blacks again for the first time since the first half. And it was starting to look like the ABs might open it up a little bit. There was another break not long after that try as well, but England stayed with them, and the All Blacks just could not finish those breaks. And then the English started running the ball a bit more as well. But yeah, England kept kicking in the AB's half too, and Beauden Barrett made them pay. He doing what the All Blacks couldn't do in the first 55 or so minutes. Certainly before Beauden Barrett came on, just couldn't get any territory at all. But everything started most things started to go the All Blacks' way. They got a scrum penalty, they got a line-out penalty after the contact made by Itoje in the air. Itoje was just competing at everything. And from that line-out penalty, the All Blacks kicked 3 points, taking a 7-point lead. And that penalty kick went off the post. So it was tense times, I can tell you. There was 5 minutes left at that point. All Blacks with a 7-point lead. England still kicking, and I couldn't believe it. Not long after that, the English had the ball in All Blacks half, and they still kicked. But anyway, I mean, the Irish did that in the previous in that game that I just mentioned, didn't they? Mackenzie, he cleared from that kick. 3 ABs missed tackles sort of in and around that time, was just not good enough. 2 were to Beauden Barrett, and the reserve outside back from England, I think, made 2 breaks, beating Severus on the outside. So, England gave it everything, didn't they? England, and they were really, really going for that draw. I think at that point, with a few minutes to go, that there were, to win was sort of out of it, maybe out of reach. But maybe if England had kicked one of the 2 penalties that they had, and late in the All Blacks half, maybe if they kicked one, reset and had another go, they might have had a chance to win. But anyway, they were going for the draw, and credit to them, they kicked to the from those 2 All Blacks penalties, England kicked to the corner, and the All Blacks just defended their line so well. I thought they did. It was hectic. There was a lot going on, and the referee might have missed the odd thing. I don't know. It was hard to track all the little details, but I felt it was refereed pretty well. I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, look, Beauden Barrett again was the key. He played a part in that final play, getting under the ball to hold it up, and I'll talk about that final decision in a minute as well. So yeah, look, it was a brilliant game, awesome game. Well, hopefully, when we look back for a long time, and it really does set up a great game at Twickenham later this year when the All Blacks are travelling. So yeah, just a few general comments. Damien McKenzie, you can just tell his confidence isn't quite there. You look at him playing Super Rugby, and he's a confident player, or confidence type player. He has a go at everything, and he was shut down. He definitely wasn't given space that he prefers to work with, and the English just kept. They smashed him last week. So Beauden did make a difference when he came on, but I just wanted to point out that players were pretty tight at that point as well. Starting a test is vastly different. However, Beauden's got plenty of experience with that as well. But Beauden Barrett was the difference in the end. He made that much change to the game. He changed the game that much, and to have that experience on the bench, of course, he's got speed as well. But his kicking was another level again. He kicked when he should have. He kicked perfectly when he needed to, and the All Blacks finally got some territory, finally got some confidence. I'd also talk about Cortez Ratama. I just felt when he came on, the All Blacks had a better idea of what they were doing. For long periods of that game, there was passes to players that weren't ready for it. Adi Savia getting the ball behind the ruck and then going from a standing start, and I don't blame him, but the flow wasn't there. People didn't know where to be, where to receive the ball, and I don't know what that was about, but it just felt clunky. Now, I know Beauden Barrett contributed to the flow of the game when he came on, but certainly Cortez Ratama got to the ball, passed it to men moving forward. So he did make a difference, and made Cortez Ratama should be proud of the value that he added in his debut game. Areas that England won the game, restarts when they were kicking off, but probably both ways. But the All Blacks just did not handle those very well at all. England winning lineouts. Clearly, I know that the All Blacks won a couple late, but Itoje was awesome in the lineout. The All Blacks just didn't have answers for it at times. Territory. I'll talk about stats in a minute, but territory. England just nailed that so well. They knew they controlled the game. They put pressure. Their defence was strong. The rush defence, taking time away. It was all good stuff, and the All Blacks were under a ton of pressure. And it took one of the more standout efforts by one of the world's best players to get All Blacks out of trouble, really. In terms of refereeing and probably that last play, but Nick Berry handled the situation of the game exceptionally well. Okay, despite any errors or wrong calls, he handled the situation of the game very well. Some of those wrong calls went both ways, but I felt most of the calls were pretty good actually. But again, that could be a debatable thing. I'm sure I'd love to hear what the England fans thought, and all genuine, being genuine when I say that. But anyway, but for that indecision under that pressure, and as an example, Jamie George saying this is a massive call here. I mean, it's adding pressure to it as well. And Jamie George was very tactical about that. I like Jamie George. I think he speaks exceptionally well. But that was just adding to the moment too, wasn't it? But look, from my point of view, it's pretty hard to argue from a technical aspect, but the correct decision was made. The All Blacks player that made that tackle was not part of the maul. So the two English players did detach, but that All Blacks player was not part of the maul. So they detached. All Blacks player made a tackle, but of course the English player there was an English player in front of the ball. Now it's just worth talking about the 80-minute game. I know I made a short there, and it was right after the game how I read it. You just felt like the All Blacks had done enough. They were 7 points ahead, so I was specifically talking about beating the All Blacks. The English still, the turnaround was around that 60th minute, and you could see them tire a little bit, but they were still there, and boy did they give it one last crack. The English did exceptionally well, and honestly don't know how the All Blacks managed to hang on right there at the end. That rolling maul off the line out is England's bread and butter, and the All Blacks managed to stop that somehow. I don't know how. In terms of some of the stats, I'll just finish with this. The territory, a massive 62% to England. The possession basically even, except for the last 10 minutes, England having 72% possession in that last 10 minutes. New Zealand winning the scoreboard at that point, in that last 10 minutes, 3-0. I think they got the penalty around 5 minutes to go. New Zealand losing just too many lineouts. I think their lineout success was only 77%, but the All Blacks did win a couple in that second half against the throw. Penalties, it was 6-11, so as I did say, the All Blacks discipline was pretty good, I must admit. Okay, so some calls might have got missed. I'd love to hear about that, but certainly based on stats, there was 6-11, and that's really good to see from my point of view, because the All Blacks discipline hasn't been great. But you have to also remember that 2 of those penalties were in the last 10 minutes when the ABs were 7 points out in front, and I guess, man, just struggling to hang on at that time. There was 16 missed tackles to the ABs, but it was 29 to England, 29 missed tackles. But that sees England scrambled really well. The All Blacks didn't score many tries, did they? And the ABs kicked more than England, 36 times to 29. You felt like England kicked every chance they got, but no, the ABs actually kicked more. So, let's just take a step back there. But yeah, too many errors. I think it was, ABs... 14 turnovers, so that was just way too many. So heck of a good weekend of rugby. Apologise for how sort of rushed and average I've thrown this together. If you have watched till now, thank you so much. Next weekend it's still a bit of international football or rugby, but they are it's a bit weird. Some of the big sides are playing some of the lesser teams, and you would expect that to normally happen for the first week of the July or June-July tests. So anyway, so look out for those. And then in terms of the Euros, I watched the game last night, All Blacks versus England, with England fans, and they were pretty gutted to miss out, because they did have a good chance to win that one. But I'm sure that Monday morning will be all about the Euros, so I'll be an England fan Monday morning. But anyway, thanks again, and I'll make a couple more videos next week. Cheers.